Southern Charms, back with a new video. We're gonna be doing an update to the different colorants that you can put in your resin. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take each colorant, put it in resin, and pour it so you can see how resin reacts how colorants react in resin. So I did a little short to preview this and went over some different colorants, but there was something, well, a couple things I left out, and I'm curious. Did you see that short? Pause right now, go in comments and tell me, did you catch anything that I left out of that short? We have our pigment paste. We have some alcohol ink. We have mica powder. We have transparent ink. We have opaque ink. We have tint, which is the same thing as transparent. And the one thing I left out of that short was acrylic paint. And I'm going to show you how we can use that. Whoop, get back up there. So I went ahead and mixed up all my resin, separated it into 2 ounce, using my little 3 ounce bathroom cups. So let's mix our resin, shall we? Let's start with our pigment paste. Y'all remember this chart that I made, and we're going to go from one end of the chart to the other. So let's start first with pigment paste. And remember, I said every time you open your paste, make sure that you stir it up well, because it can separate, and we don't want that. We want to make sure it's all combined and good. Now I'm going to wipe it off, and I don't have my little cover like I like to leave. When you open this, it has a foil over it. So you can leave half the foil in place. Then when you wipe your stick, you have that foil to wipe it on. So you're not having to wipe it on the side of your jar. Because sometimes what happens, if it gets on the side and you close your jar, sometimes it gets stuck and it's not so easy to get undone. So you see, I just barely dipped my stick in the resin. So I'm gonna put it in there. This is pigment paste. What is pigment paste? Pigment paste is heavy. Remember on the chart, I said it's heavy, it's like a brick. When you pour pigment paste, it's gonna stay where you put it. It's not gonna float and move around like other colorants do. So, pigment paste is something that is really good for geodes or any kind of project that you want your color to stay in place and not, mix and meld with other colors around it. And I also can tell you, pigment paste, I found I have far less bubbles using pigment paste than other colorants. Maybe because it is heavier. Alright, so we have that mixed. I'll put my stick to the side. And we're just gonna pour it. Just pour it in like so. Done. Okay? And you see, there's hardly any bubbles there. And I do have my handy dandy alcohol because that is something different from the other video I made. I'm gonna set this over here. You're not gonna be able to see it. It's fine. Because I wanted you to see how it mixed in resin, how easily it melded. No issues at all, right? So now we're gonna move on to the next thing on our chart. We had pigment paste, and then we have opaque colorant. And I'm using a pinata. And this is great. So I'm just gonna 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Alright. And you know what? We're gonna mix this in our resin. And these inks really like to stick to these paper cups. So if you're using a paper cup, well, really anytime you're stirring, make sure that you go around the sides and get all of your colorant off. Okay? So we have our opaque color. We're going to pour that. Okay. Set this to the side. Move this out of the way and give it a little squirt of alcohol. Because you guys, on this, I am not using any fire. And that is different from the last video that I made for you guys. Our resin molds have really changed in the last year. The quality has really changed. So we're finding that if you use fire or heat on your molds, it melds your project to your piece, and we don't want that. So we have pigment paste and we have our opaque color. Set those, and then next, what do I have next? Alcohol, transparent. Okay, mica in the middle. So we are going to do our mica color. That's next. And we're gonna use this beautiful, y'all look at that. This is from Iink Pours. She is like a queen for geodes. We're just gonna add our mica in there. Let me close this because I don't want that everywhere. We'll put it in our little line that's gonna match our chart. And mica is one that moves in your resin. It does move, and it causes striations because mica wants to move to the center of your piece. And I don't care if it is a circular piece like we're pouring, it will leave striations or little lines that kind of look like an eyeball. But if you use a rectangular or oval shape, your mica is going to move toward the center, but it's going to leave a line of mica on your back. You're going to see that. And a lot of people ask, why does that keep happening? What is that? Well, it's because your mica powder moves in the resin and it moves to the middle. And you'll see just a straight line, and that's mica powder doing its thing. So when you see striations, which is great for some techniques, we want them to move back toward the center in our push pours, in our dragon eyes, and things like that, because it adds that extra effect. Y'all look, isn't it beautiful? Beautiful color. All right, so we're gonna pour our mica. All right, that's plenty in there. Gonna move this because we're gonna look at these after they cure. I want you guys to see them as we mix them, to see how they mix. Mica is something, and Iink very good with hers. Her mica powders are incredible because they mix really well. Quality of mica powder really, really matters, because you can get like a great bargain off of Temu or off of Amazon that is not a great brand. And you'll be able to tell that because you'll get a lot of lumps and things like that left in your resin when you're trying to stir it all up. You'll find lumps. Or like, you know when you make pancakes, and if you don't mix your batter real well and you put it on the griddle to cook, you'll get a little poof sometimes of powder while it's cooking. That's what happens with a cheap mica. It doesn't combine well in your resin, and it will leave clumps and things like that in your resin, which you really don't want to do. One way to combat that, and here is your first pro tip, is you can put mica powder in a little bit of alcohol and make a slurry, and then pour it into your resin. give your alcohol time. Whoop. Here we go. Handy dandy baby wipes. I forgot about this with this tint. Okay. Get this. There. You see that tint leaving colors. Alright. So we're gonna, this one's, it unscrews. You just twist it. So I'm gonna add some tint in here. And I'm gonna add a lot for a reason. I want you to see. I'm gonna wipe it down as I close this back. Because tints are really messy. And it's a good idea to keep them in a Ziploc bag. So we're gonna put the tint here. I'm gonna wipe my gloves. Put that over out of the way. Now, a tint is the same thing as a transparent ink. And what does that mean? That means it doesn't matter how much you pour in here, how much tint you use, it's always going to be transparent. See how you can see through that? It's see-through. That's what I mean by transparent. And it doesn't matter how much. You could dump the whole bottle in here. Probably not going to cure very well if you did that, but you can see what I mean. It doesn't matter how much you add. It's always going to stay transparent. So let's pour our transparent. There we go. We're gonna set this to the side and out of the way. So you see what I mean? It kind of looks like Jello, right? It has that Jello type consistency. And that's what we get with transparent. Jello is transparent, right? So next to transparent, we have our actual transparent inks, which I love these inks. They're great to use with your UV resin. They're great to use if you're making an ocean scene because you want to be able to see through the bottom. Okay, so I'm gonna add this. And this is not alcohol ink, it's just a transparent ink, which means it's solid. See how that's solid through? It's not floating toward the top. That is the difference of transparent and alcohol inks. Alcohol inks always float to the top, like a helium balloon. Remember, that's what we said on the chart? It's like a helium balloon. It floats and can very easily move in resin. So, this is our transparent. Again, always see-through. Don't matter how much you put in, it's always gonna be see-through. Just like that. Looks like the ocean, right? This is why it's such a great, great color for ocean pieces. There we go. There's our transparent. Gonna move that out of the way. And then we have, what did we say? Is at the far end of the chart that I made you guys, alcohol ink. We're going to use coffee for the alcohol ink. I really love this brown, y'all. Beautiful. See how it's floating at the top? You see that? How it stays at the top. It doesn't fill completely with the color. So let's give this a stir and see what I mean. It really floats in resin. This is why when people use alcohol ink, you hear them using a sinker white with it because the sinker white sinks and pulls that color down with it. That's why you use a sinker white with your alcohol inks, to pull the color down so it's not just floating around, right? Okay, let's pour our alcohol ink. There we go with that. Oop. I see a husky hair. Do y'all have dogs or cats that like to leave their hair everywhere? Goodness gracious, if you have never had huskies, let me tell you what they say about shedding. Holy cow, crazy. Oh my gosh, there's another one. Alright. think that's good. We're gonna set it over here. And now we're gonna get to the one that I left out of the short on purpose. And that's acrylic paint. You can use acrylic paint with resin. The tip and the secret is you have to use a very, very small amount, because acrylic paint is water-based, and water and resin do not mix at all. So as long as you use a very, that's all I'm going to use. So I'll set this over here. But this is the only amount that I'm going to put in this. 2 ounces of resin, because I pre-measured all these cups, so it's 2 ounces. And you'll see, it's going to get dark, and it's going to color my resin, and it's going to be just fine. But you can't use a lot, or your piece will not cure at all. So make sure you're very, very careful with acrylic paint. But you can use it if that's all you have starting out. That's what I did starting out. And I used a toothpick and just barely used enough on a toothpick to color it, to get some color in my resin, because I didn't want to run the risk of it not curing. And there's our black acrylic. So there we go with that. Ta-da! Now, everything is poured, and I'm going to let it sit overnight and do its little thing in resin. But we followed along the chart, y'all. We went from tint to opaque to mica powder. I'm sorry, not tint. Pigment paste to opaque ink, mica powder, then our tint and our transparent, which are the same thing, and then our alcohol ink. And last, I showed you how to use acrylic paint. I know that we have UV colorants and there's rules for that, and I'll cover that tomorrow. I'm not going to do it in this front section because we're not using UV resin, and there are differences in using UV resin as compared to using a regular 1v1 resin. We'll cover that tomorrow when we take these bad boys out, and we can show you what goes with what. So I'm going to set our inks next to each other so we know what is what. We have our mica, we have opaque, and we have our pigment paste. So for now, y'all, that's all we got to talk about. We poured everything, we mixed it, you can see how it works in resin. All done with that part. Make sure, if you haven't already, go down and give us a like real quick. That helps other artists find our videos. So anybody who's wanting to know, how can I color resin, and what are the different colorants, what things can I use, this will help guide them. So make sure you give it a like. And if you haven't already, if you're getting something out of these videos, I really do appreciate you subscribing, because that's what helps the channel. And until all these cure, y'all, it's only going to be a minute for you guys. It's going to be a lot longer for me. So until this is done, I will see you in a few. Hey y'all, we're back. Everything is set. So what I want to do is let's go in order of how the chart. You'll see the chart. And on the chart, you see we start from pigment paste to opaque ink to mica to tints and transparent ink, and then we end with alcohol inks on the chart. So let's do it in that order. This is the same order that we poured them, and this is our pigment paste. Remember that. So we'll take it out, and you'll see no bubbles. It's a heavier paste. A little bubble where there was something on the mold that took care of that, but that's the only bubble. There's no other bubbles. And this is because this ink is heavy and sinks like a brick Wherever you put pigment paste resin, it should stay. It's not going to float around in your resin and migrate and do all those things. It should stay put where you put it. So there's our pigment paste. And next we have our opaque ink. And this means that it's gonna cover, well, of course, again, I had stuff on my mold because I didn't clean them out ahead of time, but you can see. Opaque means you can't see through it. You can't see my hand back here. That's opaque. It makes it a solid color, like our pigment paste is opaque too, but it's just using ink and not the paste. That's the only difference there. Good solid color. Then in the middle, we have mica. And mica migrates and moves in our resin and makes these beautiful effects. I love mica powder for what it does. And this is the mica. Remember I said, you're gonna see that line because it migrates toward the center of your piece. So there's that line where the mica is. And there's that beautiful color. And you can see, I don't have clear striations in this because I did not add a second color. I could have added a purple, which I probably should have. And then you would see clearly how it migrates and you would see the striations in it. And I'll add a picture of what I mean by striations in a round piece, so you can see the difference. So look for that picture right here, right now. There you go. But y'all, this is gorgeous. I love this color. Perfect. So then we moved on to our transparent inks. And this is our tint. And remember, it comes in that messy bottle. And it's a tint because it gives it that shade. But guess what? You can see my hand all the way through. It stays transparent. I don't care how much you add. You could put the whole bottle in and it's always going to be see-through. So there is your tint, which is the same effect as your transparent ink. And I told y'all I love these for my ocean scenes because I want to see the bottom of my piece, like you do if you're in shallow water. You see your sand in the bottom of your seafloor. That's what this transparent. So now we have two that are transparent. You'll always be able to see through. So that's what that means on the chart. And then last, we have our alcohol ink. And this alcohol ink floats. See how you see more of it at the top of this than you do here? And that is because alcohol ink floats to the top like a helium balloon is always floating, going up, right? And when you blow on a helium balloon, just the littlest breath makes it move and jump all around. That's exactly how alcohol ink works in your resin. Same thing. So you can see that difference. And then lastly, I said the secret hidden factor was acrylic paint. And you can use acrylic paint, and we use some in here. And remember, you have to use very, very tiny amounts because acrylic paint is water-based, and water and resin don't mix. So here is the acrylic. It cured fine, all went well, and we used a small amount. But it has worked out perfect. So there's the acrylic. So all of that is done. Now let's just do some fun stuff. I had some resin left over, so I added my holographic glitter, some of that into my resin, and made these cute little bunnies. And you'll see, it's a mica powder. See, there's little lines, and you'll see it here. There's a line there, because it acts like mica. But isn't that cute, y'all? So now I can take my acrylic paint pens or my metallic markers and add some little details to him. So cute. I love this mold. They're so adorable. And these perfect for eco resin too. And you can send little blanks with some acrylic paint or markers and let kids decorate them, color them however they want to. So, and then last but not least, I took everything we had left out of all these inks, from my paste to the opaque to the transparent to the alcohol ink, even the acrylic paint, and I poured it all in one coaster. These are just all leftovers. What I had left out of all that resin that I poured. Look at that, y'all. Isn't that beautiful? Wow. That's pretty cool. That turned out really well, y'all. I love the effects. And now you can see the mica moving in. You can see it much better here. See the green streaks. That's mica moving toward the center. So there's your striations that y'all were asking, or that I was trying to convey to you. But I love these sides too. Look at that. Resin is so much fun, y'all. And letting it do its own thing really brings out cool effects. So there you have it. These are all the colorants that I added in my chart, broken down and explained one by one, and you can see how they react in resin and what we mean by each one, our transparents. So y'all, that's all for this one. Leave me a comment below. Was there one that shocked you or that you were surprised to see the effects of? Leave me a comment. Which one do you use most often in your resin? Are you drawn to a certain category of colorants, or do you experiment with every little bit? Anyway, leave me a comment, let me know which one you liked best and which one do you find yourself more drawn to. I use a lot of pigment paste in mine, and I use a lot of mica. I won't lie, I pretty much use them all. Depends on what I'm doing. But I tend to be drawn to my pigment paste because they blend easier. I don't have to worry about lumps, and I don't have to use a lot. So my pigment paste jars last a very long time, so I get my money's worth out of that. But y'all, this is it for this one. Make sure you do all the YouTube things, that you give this a thumbs up so other people can find this who might be struggling with what can I use to color my resin, or how do they work? What do they look like? This, just a simple thumbs up, gives these people, you know, more chance of finding the video and finding the help and answers they're looking for. So if you haven't already, I would definitely appreciate if you got anything or you get anything out of these videos, if you could tap that subscribe button, that would be great too. And if you want to become a member of the channel, just simply click join. It's a small monthly fee, it helps the channel, and there's going to be special perks coming for members only. You don't want to miss that, y'all. But until next time, happy arting. Ta-ta for now.